It started as a rumor, a whisper on social media and in hushed conversations at midnight. But by sunrise on October 7, 2025, the nightmare was real. What seemed unthinkable just hours before had become the new reality for millions of Americans waking up to chaos. No gas signs stretched from Seattle to Minneapolis, a chilling message repeated at station after station, city after city. The heartland and the coasts were united by a single, terrifying truth. There was no fuel to be found. The familiar glow of gas stations, once beacons of comfort and routine, vanished overnight. In their place was darkness, silence, and a sense of unease that settled over neighborhoods like a heavy fog. Cars lined up for blocks, engines idling as drivers waited, desperate and confused. Some had slept in their vehicles, hoping for a delivery that never came. Others simply abandoned their cars, defeated by the uncertainty. This wasn't a glitch or a local shortage. America's fuel supply had collapsed overnight. News crews scrambled to cover the unfolding disaster, but even they struggled to reach the scenes as their own vehicles ran low. Highways, usually packed with commuters and travelers, were eerily empty, except for stranded vehicles and the blinking of emergency lights. The hum of daily life was replaced by an unsettling quiet. The morning commute simply didn't happen. Streets that should have been alive with movement were deserted, as if the world had pressed pause. Arguments erupted at the few stations with any fuel left, tempers flaring as prices soared by the minute. Desperation turned neighbors into rivals, and patience wore thin. The disbelief quickly turned to fear. How could the world's most powerful nation run dry? People stared at empty pumps in shock, unable to process the scale of the crisis. Ambulances, delivery trucks, and the machinery of daily life, all dependent on fuel, were suddenly at risk. Essential services ground to a halt, and the ripple effects spread through every community. The engine of America had stalled, exposing a vulnerability few had imagined. The silence at gas stations was a stark reminder of how fragile modern life can be. Today, filling your tank is no longer a guarantee. Each attempt is a gamble, and every empty pump is a reminder of how quickly normal can disappear. The story of how we got here is complex, involving global politics, supply chains, and decisions made far from these empty streets. But the impact is brutally simple, felt in every stalled car and anxious face. The pumps are dry, and no one knows when the fuel will flow again. For now, America waits, hoping for answers, and for relief from this nightmare. The cause? Canada, our closest ally, abruptly slashed oil exports overnight. Citing urgent domestic needs and a bold environmental policy, Canada declared its oil would serve Canadians first. The US had long relied on Canada's steady supply, assuming it would never end. But Ottawa's new Canada First strategy redirected oil to their own reserves and imposed strict extraction limits. The move, praised by Canadian environmentalists, stunned Washington and sent shockwaves through global markets. Canada insists it's not aggression, but necessity, pointing to climate disasters and the global shift away from fossil fuels. Regardless of intent, the result is the same. The tap is down to a trickle. America, the world's largest oil consumer, was caught completely unprepared. The empty gas stations are just the beginning. What was once a rare sight is now a daily reality for millions of Americans as fuel shortages sweep across the country. The shock is rippling through the US economy at lightning speed, touching every corner of daily life. People are lining up at ATMs, worried about their savings, while shoppers in grocery stores scramble to find basic necessities. Even the busiest city streets are quieter as fewer cars venture out. Diesel is scarce and expensive, sending transportation costs soaring. Truck drivers, the backbone of our supply chain, are struggling to fill their tanks, and many are forced to wait for hours or turn back empty-handed. Shipping companies are parking fleets, grocery shelves are thinning, and prices for everything are rising. The cost of moving goods has skyrocketed, and that burden is being passed on to consumers everywhere. Construction projects are stalling, flights are cancelled, And even restaurants are struggling as customers stay home, unable to afford the rising costs or simply unable to get there. The stock market is in freefall, especially in transportation and retail. Investors are panicking, and the uncertainty is spreading to every sector, threatening jobs and retirement savings. A decision in Ottawa is devastating workers and businesses across America. Factory workers face layoffs, small business owners are closing their doors, and entire communities are feeling the impact. Our economy's dependence on a single foreign supplier has been exposed. The pipelines and refineries that once seemed invisible are now at the center of a national crisis, reminding us how interconnected and vulnerable we truly are. The pain at the pump is immediate, but the long-term damage could be far worse. Families are forced to make tough choices, cutting back on essentials just to afford fuel. The gears of commerce are grinding to a halt. Warehouses sit idle, factories are shuttered, and distribution centers are eerily quiet. The system is fragile, and now everyone can see it. Conversations everywhere are filled with worry, as people try to make sense of what's happening and what comes next. If a solution isn't found soon, the consequences will be profound. Communities are bracing for even harder times, hoping for answers before the situation grows even more dire. Beyond the numbers, the crisis is tearing at the fabric of daily life. Parents scramble to get kids to school. Essential workers face impossible choices. For many, a tank of gas now costs a week's pay, if they can find it at all. Rural families are especially isolated, forced to choose between food and fuel. Price gouging is rampant, and the sense of community is giving way to desperation. The American dream of mobility has vanished overnight. Those with means can adapt, but millions are trapped by empty tanks and uncertainty. The divide between the haves and have-nots is growing. Reports of roadside gasoline sales at outrageous prices are common. Life is at a standstill for millions, a stark reminder of our fragile way of life. The crisis is no longer abstract, it's personal, immediate, and everywhere. America's lifeblood, trucking, has stopped flowing. Truck stops are now graveyards of idle rigs, drivers stranded far from home. Diesel prices have quadrupled, bankrupting small operators overnight. Cargo sits in trailers, spoiling or expiring, as drivers burn through savings just to eat. Thousands of trucks are stuck, especially in northern states, creating a domino effect. Factories are shutting down, grocery stores can't restock, and even hospitals are at risk. Truckers, the invisible heroes of our economy, are now isolated and facing ruin. Many sleep in their cabs, rationing food, waiting for answers that never come. Until fuel flows again, shortages will only worsen. The paralysis deepens with every passing day. Across the nation, experts are sounding the alarm. This is a crisis of our own making, and its consequences are rippling through every sector of society. The warnings have been clear for years, but now, the reality is impossible to ignore. Dr. Elena Petrova, a leading energy analyst, points out that America's over-reliance on Canadian oil has left us dangerously exposed to sudden supply shocks. She emphasizes that diversification was always the safer path, but it was overlooked in favor of short-term convenience. We ignored the warnings. Now we're paying the price, she says, her tone grave. The consequences are not just economic, they're social and political, affecting every American household. Economists are now warning of a looming recession. With transportation costs skyrocketing, the price of every good and service is rising, acting as a hidden tax on families and businesses alike. The ripple effects are being felt in grocery stores, at the pump, and in the job market. The Federal Reserve, for all its power, can't print gasoline. Monetary policy is powerless in the face of physical shortages, and that's a reality policymakers are struggling to address. Security analysts are calling this a new era of resource nationalism. Energy is no longer just a commodity, it's a political weapon, wielded even among traditional allies. The global landscape is shifting, and alliances are being tested. Canada's recent move, though officially framed as environmental policy, is having the effect of an embargo. The sudden restriction has sent shockwaves through the energy market, leaving the US scrambling for alternatives. There are no quick fixes. Ramping up domestic production is a process that takes months, not days, and the strategic petroleum reserve is only a temporary stopgap. Experts warn that relying on reserves is not a sustainable solution. In the immediate term, the focus must be on ensuring emergency fuel supplies for essential services, hospitals, first responders, and critical infrastructure. Without this, the crisis could deepen rapidly. But beyond the immediate crisis, experts insist that the bigger conversation about America's long-term energy future can no longer be postponed. The nation must confront hard questions about sustainability, security, and independence. The experts are in rare agreement. This is just the beginning of a much larger challenge. The decisions made now will shape the country's future for decades to come. The coming weeks will be incredibly difficult for millions of Americans. Long lines at gas stations, empty shelves, and anxious families are becoming the new normal. America must urgently rethink its entire energy strategy. The time for debate is over. The time for decisive action is now. In Washington, the blame game is in full swing. Emergency session, press conferences, and finger-pointing dominate the Capitol. Critics slam the administration for being blindsided. Others blame decades of failed energy policy. Calls for more drilling clash with demands for a rapid shift to renewables. Meanwhile, practical solutions for stranded Americans are lost in the noise. The public wants action, not rhetoric. The pressure on the president is mounting, and the clock is ticking. For families, the future is uncertain, and the challenge is immediate. Shortages will persist, even if a deal is struck tomorrow. Every drop of fuel must be conserved. Non-essential travel is over. Communities must organize carpools and support essential workers. Stock up on essentials, but avoid panic buying. Hoarding only worsens shortages. Expect disruptions in food and medicine. Plan meals and minimize waste. The era of single-occupant vehicles may be ending for many. Public transit, bikes, and walking will become vital. Adaptation and community support are key to weathering the storm. How we respond now will shape our future. This crisis is a wake-up call for America. We need more than a quick fix. We need a new energy strategy. True independence means diversifying our sources and investing in renewables. It's not about politics. It's about national security and resilience. Every American has a role. Stay informed, demand real plans from leaders, and support smarter energy choices. Don't let this moment fade. Hold officials accountable for long-term solutions. The decisions made now will shape generations. The world is changing, and energy is at the heart of it. Understanding these shifts is essential for our future. Stay engaged. This story is far from over.